Right, boys, we're taking a break from the indirect statement and we're going to look at some pronouns today. The first one that we're going to look at is the word quidam, which means a certain. So a certain emperor was ruling Rome, or we saw a certain woman in the forum. It can also mean one, and if it's plural, then it means some. So we saw some women, etc. Obviously, those are quite different translations, but that's just the way this word works. And obviously, it's all about context when you decide which translation you go for. So it is time to write out a table. You can either look at this table on page 109 of the textbook, or you can pause the video and copy out this table. And once you've done that, press play and we'll talk about how this word is formed and how to spot it in sentences. Okay, so the nice thing about this word is it's a good chance to revise the pronoun qui. Okay, if you look at the start of this word, we've got qui, quai, quod. Okay, the word a certain, one, or some in Latin is just the word for who or which with dam on the end. So we've got qui, quai, quod, and we've just had dam added on to the end. We've talked previously about the pronoun idem, which means the same, and how the dem bit isn't the ending, it's the bit before the dem that's the ending, which obviously doesn't make any sense, but that's just how these pronouns work. And quidam is the same in that dam is not the ending. If you look at this table, if dam was the ending, that means that every word would have the ending dam. So the ending bit is actually the bit before the dam. So if you have a glance at the stuff before dam, it is just qui, quai, quod. The only difference is that when there would usually be an M at the end, in order to make pronunciation a bit easier, it's changed to an N. So the accusative of qui is quem, but here they've changed it to quen dam rather than quem dam. The accusative of quai is quam, but instead of that we've gone for quan dam, again just to make the pronunciation easier. And this has also happened with the genitive plural, so instead of quorum plus a dam, it's quorun, quarun, and quorun here. Okay. Apart from that, it's all exactly the same as qui, quai, quod. So if you covered up the dams, you have qui, quen, cuius, cui, quo, qui, quos, quorum, quibus, quibus. So the only difference is that N sometimes instead of an M. Okay. So you've got similarities with qui. You've also got similarities with idem, because remember, idem was just the pronoun is, ea, id, with dem stuck on the end. And the nice thing about this word is obviously you see the dam at the end straight away, you know it must be this pronoun. It's going to be translated as a certain, one, or some. If it's plural, translate it as some. So all these ones down here, sorry about my pen, are translated as some. The singulars, therefore, can either be translated or as a certain or one. So let's have a look at some example sentences. Okay, so this is the first example. You've obviously got your quidam form here, but we've got to look at the bit before the dam to figure out the ending. Okay, so we see that it's quos. So if we look back at our table, quos is over here. So that means that it's masculine, accusative, plural. That also means that we're translating it as some because it's plural. Okay, but if you have a look at the rest of the sentence, there's no noun here that it's matched up with. So we don't know what it's some of. Is it some men? Is it some women? Is it some goats? We just don't know. So we have to use the gender, and we've done this before when we have a pronoun or an adjective without a noun, and we just have to put in a word that would make sense. So as it's accusative plural, we're going to assume, as it's masculine accusative plural, that's the most important bit, we're going to assume that it's some men. So conspexy is I caught sight of, quosdam, some masculine men on the top of the mountain. Okay, let's look at another one. Okay, so here we've got librum, quendam, quaero. This time we've got quendam, which if we look back at the table is up here. So it's masculine accusative singular. But in the sentence we have another masculine accusative singular, so librum here. So this time we know what word the pronoun is describing, is referring to. It's going to be translated either as a certain or one. Quaero means I am looking for. So it makes most sense here to say, I am looking for a certain book. Okay, next one. This time we've got a feminine plural version. We've got quidam, which appears here. Okay, we've also got puellae in this sentence, which is feminine and plural, so we're going to assume that those two are agreeing with each other. But because it's plural this time, we need to say some. So some girls, stabants, were standing in the streets. Okay, so before you have a go at the exercise on page 109, we're going to look at a second pronoun now. And this one turns up on page 111, but I've got the table here. So this is alter, okay? It's where we get the word alternative from. It's translated as another or other or second. So all words that basically mean alternative. Okay, so again, pause the video or turn to page 111 and copy out this pronoun. This again is very similar to quidam. Okay, so the endings here are very straightforward because they are just the same as any pronoun or adjective. Note the difference that the dative and ablative plural here, instead of ibus, are is. So a little bit different there. So they've gone for the first and second declension normal endings there rather than the third declension. But that shouldn't be too weird to us because we know from any noun and adjective that is and ibus are both dative and ablative plural endings. So they should be pretty easy to spot and translate. The genitive plurals are totally normal, and in fact all the plurals are just first or second declension endings. Note there, you've got your neuter plural ending in A. Just the thing to point out, which we didn't mention in quidam, but it's worth mentioning because it happens here as well, is the weird genitive and dative singulars for pronouns, remember, ends in eos and e for the genitive and the dative, eos and e. If you have a little flick back to quidam over here, you have it again, eos, e, eos, e, eos, e, okay? And that doesn't happen in a normal noun usually, so you won't see a genitive singular ending in eos. You will quite often see this though for pronouns, and the same for just the letter I to show the dative. It's handy because all genders are the same, so there's fewer endings, to learn. But obviously it means that when you spot it, it isn't as clear which noun it's agreeing with because it could be any gender. So again, you've just got to think about context. Now, as the textbook states, a common use of this pronoun alter is in a pair, and I'll show you what that means in an example. So you can see here we've got alter in the first bit of the sentence and alter also in the second. When you see alter followed by another alter, you translate it as one and then the other, okay? I mean, it is literally showing two alternatives. So this sentence is therefore translated as one book is tricky, the other is easy, okay? So the est has been used twice there, which quite often happens in Latin, and that's a very common use of alter. In the textbook also, it chooses at this moment to talk about the pronoun alios, which is very similar. The reason that it's mentioned is because In this example right here, you would use alter if there were just two options involved. So there's just two books involved in this description here. If there is more than two options, then instead of alter, we use alios, okay, which just looks like this. Alios is used. And again, very similar translation. So I'll show you an example sentence. So in this sentence, we've got some plurals instead of singulars. Alii is obviously a plural ending. So instead of one doing something and the other doing something, we're going to say some do this, others do that. So this sentence would be translated as some. Servorum is of the slaves. You can just say some slaves were working. Others were sitting in the inn. So again, alios is used as the idea of alternatives, but it's just that it's more than two things involved. Okay. We also want to note an idiom here. So this isn't something that needs to be overthought. You just need to be able to watch out for this. So we can put nota bene. We quite often get pairings where in the Latin it kind of says less than it means. It quite often happens in Latin. So the example given in the textbook is alii, alia, decunt. Now, the reason that this sentence makes things more complicated is that alii is masculine nominative plural. Alia is neuter plural. It could be nominative, it could be accusative. Okay, so what that means is it can't be some do this, some do that, because it's not a comparison, because there's two different genders going on here. Plus, you can't really have neuter things doing anything, definitely not saying stuff. So instead, think about logically what this might mean. We've got alii, which is some men, okay, and then we've got alia, which is some things. So this sentence essentially means some men say some things. Okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And the reason for this is it's a shortened version of ali, alia, ali, alia. Decunt. Okay, so this is a shortened version of the sentence. Some men say some things, other men say other things. If that is confusing, don't worry. You just kind of need to watch out for this as a set sentence, or there might be something very similar to it that's used. So instead of translating it as some men say other things, which doesn't really make much sense, you've got to realize that there's kind of two different people involved here. So instead we translate it as different people say different things. The whole point is that alios is being used to show alternatives, which is why you can't just say some men say some things, because that doesn't suggest that there's an alternative option. Okay. So the final pronoun that we're going to look at is really straightforward. So we've seen quidam, we've seen alter. Now we're going to look at nemo. Already you can see that the table is nice and small. We know this pronoun already. We know it means no one. Okay. In the textbook, this is on page 112, they've also put nothing next to it, because as you can see, this table shows the masculine or feminine form. The neuter form is just nihil, and that doesn't decline. So there's no variety in the endings. We just have variety in the endings for masculine and feminine. And it's pretty weird. I mean, the accusative ends in M, but it's basically a different word to the nominative. The genitive does have that weird pronoun eos, and the dative does end in I. But because this pronoun is so weird, you basically just have to learn it as its own little entity in its own little world. So nemo, neminem, nullius, nemini, nullo. So watch out for any of these words, because they will be some form of nemo. Okay. So have a look over these pronouns, check you understand what's going on with the endings, check you understand their place in the sentence, and then we're going to do some exercises together.